I'm going to tell you something different tonight that may be a bit of a surprise to you. I'm also going to talk about what do we mean by recovery. Think about that, recovery. We use that word a lot, but let's just kind of see what it looks like from the standpoint of nature and from the standpoint of wildlife that depend on these fire-adapted forests. Smoke really sucks, right? So let's acknowledge the human component, the human element, the loss that we visualize when we think of forest as green. That's all real. So what I'm going to try to tell you tonight is what's really happening behind the scenes with nature when the smoke is gone, when the fires are out. Some people may look at this and say, well, the gorge is destroyed, it'll never be the same, it needs to recover. Really? What about the system or the species that depend on fire? There is a long association between fire and vegetation. It goes back 400 million years. Plants and fire co-evolved. They need each other. And plants are adapted to fire. This has been going on for a very long time, and it's been going on in the gorge for a very long time, too. You know, fire is not a new visitor to the gorge. It's been here for millennia, and these forests are quite adept at being able to respond to fire. This is also a forest. And we refer to this as a snag forest. You can see all the dead standing trees in there. And the fire didn't destroy this forest. The forest was rejuvenated by it because these dry forests, in the dry forest, fire is to dry forest as rain is to rain forest. They need each other. Life and death are joined at the hip in these fire events. These trees are the most valuable parts of the ecosystem. You cannot get the new forest without these trees. They anchor the soils, they shade the vegetation. They also provide habitat for scores of insect-eating bats, birds, mammals, you name it. They're joined together. So if you are a deer or an elk, you're going to find habitat in that newly created forest. If you're a spotted owl, you'll hang out in the places that are fire refugia, that didn't cook in the blaze, and you got everything in between. That kind of variety is the spice of life that we get from a forest fire.
So I was tasked tonight with talking to you all about how this forest recovers. And what I'd like to get across to you tonight is three main points. The first is that the gorge has burned before. You know, when we look out at these forests, everything you see has burned and it's recovered. These forests are adapted to recover from fire, and the gorge will burn again. We will have fire in these forests again. These are fire-adapted ecosystems, but we can have some say into what kind of fire we have because of our management decisions. We've got spots that did burn with high intensity, and those trees were all killed. But we've got a lot of places, 55% of this fire either burned with very low severity or was completely unburned. These forests are adapted to recover from these fires, and it has recovered from these historical fires, and it will recover from the Eagle Creek fire. I like to think about fire as kind of a reset button for ecological succession. Forests are disturbance adapted, and it's very cyclical. We have periods where we have very young forests right after a disturbance event. And so these patchworks, these mosaics over space and time are incredibly important. But we have some new challenges. We have people who are living very close to the forest boundaries. We call it the wildland-urban interface. We have people farther and farther with increased human population growth and a desire to be out close to nature. We've got a legacy of fire suppression. About 100 years ago, we started suppressing fire in most of our western forests. And so when we had an absence of fire, we had more and more fuel build up. So in a lot of our forests here, what that means is there's abnormal amounts of small trees and shrubs in the understory, which makes the forest more dense and more burnable. And really, I encourage you to think about the long-term perspective. This fire was emotional for a lot of us, and what we want is a closed canopy forest as soon as possible. But I encourage you all to think about the longer perspective and the importance of disturbances to our forests and the stages of recovery that we'll get to see because we experienced this event.